kind of before I get started, I wanted to take a minute to thank all of you for deciding to stay around for this talk instead of doing literally anything else. I know it's been a long day full of amazing talks. This whole conference has been absolutely fantastic, and now we have to endure this one about advanced jQuery. This one about building a code editor, browser-based code editor with Monaco. But I like to think that before we talk about what is possible using the current web technologies that we have today, I always think it's kind of neat to go back to the past, because if we understand how bad it was back then, we can appreciate the things that we have right now. So when I was doing research for this talk, and by research I mean scrolling through Wikipedia, I found this. So this is a Babbage difference engine. And it was used to compute polynomial equations, so technically it is a computer. But my working theory is that it was used to mine Bitcoin. But still, it was from 19th century, and the code editing experience was that you would have to spin those barrels around in order to get the desired result. Obviously, there was no autocomplete at the time. But later on, we've got things like screens and so on, and so we got editors and terminals. And in some of those terminals, we've had editor which was called ED. ED stands for, you guessed it, text editor, and behold, the entirety of ED's UI. There you go. There's no UI. So basically, ED was still is. It's an editor which worked in a single line. So basically, the way it kind of worked is that you have to open it up, spend 25 years learning all of its commands, and then you are ready to go to finally write some document. And some people actually did, and they have become quite powerful into writing code with this particular editor. But the time went on, and we got better editors like Emacs and Vim. And I'm sure you know that the competition between them is kind of fierce. In fact, it's so fierce that it's literally referred to as holy war on Wikipedia. I am not making this up. And it was better, right? So for instance, Vim, there's some UI, right? You have multiple lines and so on, but still the experience of using Vim, at least for the very first time, is not exactly intuitive. In fact, some people have actually made an entire career out of joking how to exit Vim. I was told some of those people have actually retired at the age of 22, and I'm still here. Moving on, we got other editors like Notepad. I have very fond memories of this one. I used Notepad to write my very first website when I was like 12, so 20 years ago. Boy. But thing is that my site was actually kind of fast because I was not using modern web technologies, so I was using only HTML. So I got 100% Lighthouse score. Moving on, we've had Notepad++, and wow, I remember opening this one for the first time. You had multiple files and syntax highlighting and autocomplete and all of the things that we take for granted today. It was truly something. And nowadays we have editors like Visual Studio Code, which is my favorite. I've been using VSCode for the last 5 years or so, and it has support for multiple programming languages and all sorts of extensions and color themes like this one, which I will be using for the rest of the talk, yes. This is great. It's called Hot Dog Stand, and you can actually download it from the theme store. I strongly recommend it. Why we did all this? I wanted to bring your attention to the fact that we have gone a very long way. We, developers, have spent last 50 years working on having better experience for us, writing stuff on the keyboard. What about our users, our customers? And I have this opinion that nowadays, because so many products are aimed towards developers, then the developer experience becomes user experience. Because, well, if your users are developers, then by definition, it becomes user experience. And, some people are developers that you don't necessarily think of them as developers. Somebody who writes an Excel formula is a developer. Isn't this code? Somebody who, writes a query in Jira to understand if you're going to finish this ticket, this week or this quarter, they have like this whole query language. Well, it is development. So in this talk, I would like to focus on what can we do in order to make those experiences better for the user. Hey everyone, my name is Tomasz, and I strongly hope this is correct because I got it from Google Translate. So I hope that this should say hello, right? Yes. All right. On a day-to-day basis, I work at Steady. Steady is a platform which offers it's an EDI cloud platform for business integrations. So essentially what we do is that we provide fully serverless, user-driven API that allows you to build your very own business integration. So if you're in this kind of domain or business, I would love to chat about this. On top of that, I am also a co-founder at CloudDash. So CloudDash is a desktop CloudWatch client for serverless developers. So if you do something, serverless related, or either, at work or for your side projects, and you find the current experience of troubleshooting and looking at logs to be mediocre, I would love to chat. I think this is an amazing tool, and I'm obviously slightly biased because I'm a co-founder. And because I clearly do not have enough on my plate, I'm also teaching web development on egghead.io. So if you would like to learn a bit more from yours truly, you can check those resources out as well. All right, so do you want to build a code editor? I think so, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. There you go. Done. This is a code editor, right? I mean, technically it is, right? You can. I've read Lean Startup once, and they talked about minimum viable product, and there you go, this is minimum. Is it fun? No, absolutely not. But still, I've seen billion and trillion-dollar companies literally pushing something like this to production and going, there you go, have fun, write XML in this, by hand. That's going to be awesome. I think we can do better than this. And as I've kind of mentioned in the title of this talk, we're going to use Monaco Editor. So Monaco Editor is the editor which powers VSCode. So if you have ever used VSCode, you have used Monaco Editor. It's written in JavaScript, and it's kind of like the testament of how powerful the web technologies have gotten today. So, because it's written in JavaScript and so on, you can technically go and npm install it, and it's going to kind of work. There's some extra setup which you are not expected to read this. But if you are using Webpack and some of the other bundles, it can get a little bit complicated, so to speak. So what I think instead is find out which framework you are using at work. It's probably React because it's 2022, and just grab a proper wrapper for this particular framework. So I'm using Monaco Editor / React for the rest of this talk. And this is roughly how it works. So on the left-hand side, on the left-hand side, you have the fully functional JavaScript editor. On the right-hand side, you have the code that was used to generate it. So you have this app component, which returns an editor, sets the language to JavaScript, and the default value is const foo equals bar. And there you go. We have an editor working with Monaco in the browser. Thank you. Then again, I have 20 more minutes. This is clearly not enough. Let's do something more. Let's add some colors. If you are working in a company which is larger than 5 people, you probably have some sort of like a design system or component library or color themes or design language. I like the saying that if you don't have a design system, yes, you do, but it's not documented. But everybody has some sort of design system, some sort of components. And this is how you add colors to your editor. So focus on the lines from 9 to 17. And this colors object, what we get to define are the colors for the foreground and background and so on. So basically everything that you see on this slide can be fully customized when it comes to choosing a different color. So remember this beautiful hot dog red stand that I showed you earlier? You can do this if you want to, and I strongly recommend it. By the way, this slide is actually rendering its own code using the syntax highlighting applied here, and I thought this is kind of neat that we can show it very interactively. All right, next up, having a code editor which you get to write stuff, but you don't get to exactly do anything with it, is not exactly useful. So luckily, Monaco Editor, as most reusable React components, takes some certain props. So for instance, on change, right? So whenever I type something in the editor after every single keystroke, we are going to send an on-change event. So you can, for instance, persist the current state to the backend. Do not do this on every single keystroke, because I don't know about you, but for instance, I and many others, I can type kind of fast. So that would probably kill your database or MongoDB or whatever you happen to be using. Instead, do grab a debounce function, so you can either grab it from Lodash or you can ask the next person you're going to interview to write it for you. But still, do debounce those network requests. Do not send a network request after every single event. So I've had this idea when I was kind of preparing for this talk that I didn't want to exactly read the documentation out loud because this is not exactly fun. So I thought that we could do a little bit of a case study. So as I mentioned, I work for Steady, and our products are developer-based, and we use Monaco heavily. So I thought it would be kind of neat to show you what kind of problems we've had building some of our stuff and how we managed to solve them with Monaco, to give you some ideas of how you can apply those technologies for your own business needs. So small context, my team, we are working on a product called Mappings. You can see the video here. So Mappings is a generic JSON to JSON transformation engine. It has, this fancy UI that we've built, and essentially it allows you to write those expressions which don't require, huge technical or programming skills in order to create integrations between two different APIs, which can later be called via our API. And I think this is kind of neat. And this product is based on an open source language called JSONata. And you are not expected to know what it is. It's JSONata is a language for querying and transforming JSON data, which was written back in the IBM. So what we thought that we might do is that we wanted to provide a playground so that you could play with this language and perhaps happen to use our product. And we can see over here that it is composed of 3 different sections. On the left-hand side, we have the source JSON. In the middle, we have a transformation written in the JSONata language, which I've mentioned. And on the right-hand side, we get the output. Let me zoom in the middle. So probably the vast majority, or perhaps even all of you, see this language for the very first time. And you are not alone in this, because Monaco has no idea either. So Monaco comes with a huge support for languages like TypeScript and CSS and JavaScript and C++ and CoffeeScript for some reason, but it doesn't know JSONata. So if I were to do this, right, just set the language to JSONata and see what happens, this is the result. Right? So there's no syntax highlighting, nothing. Some people actually prefer it like this. So for instance, the author of Go programming language, one of the authors, actually he's anti-syntax highlighting, which I don't exactly agree with. So let's make it happen. So it's time to teach Monaco what the hell this language is. And luckily we can do this. Monaco comes with a support for something called Monarch. Monarch is a library that you can use to teach Monaco the semantics of your particular language. So you can specify, okay, those are the keywords, those are the operators, this is what a function looks like, and so on. And note that this is very generic. So if you have like a custom, configuration language, or you've decided to fork XML and combine it with JSON for some reason, you can use this in order to teach, Monaco Editor how it works and provide better experiences for your customers who have to write this language. So this is roughly how we do it. I'm going to zoom in on one of those sections. So here, what we are telling Monaco is, hey, if you happen to notice something that matches this regular expression, this is a string. And you should treat it as such, apply proper highlighting and so on. And I see you, and you are looking at this slide going like, isn't this quite a lot of regular expressions? And yes, that's true. But the thing is that you have to only write it once, and you get the benefits for quite some time. I've never said that it's going to be easy, but it's going to be powerful. And this is the result, right? So we have functions in red, objects in blue, and strings in green. And it looks much better, and it's so much better and easier to use. Next up, autocomplete. So autocomplete is by far my favorite feature in any code editor, because I write React for a living, and that means that I cannot remember all the hooks. So I use React dot, and I scroll down the list to find out which hook I'm supposed to use this time. It's probably use effect. And we wanted to build something quite similar for users of this playground. So if they type $, we're going to show them a list of all the functions that JSONata has to offer. Well, this is not PHP, this is not jQuery, but still everything starts with a $. So this is roughly how you do it in Monaco. So taking step by step. First of all, you have to register something called a completion item provider. There's quite a lot of different providers in this library. Next up, you set the trigger character. So in this particular case, whenever I type a $, we wanted to display this list of all of the functions. But this is hugely customizable, so you can do whatever you want in there. Next up, what we have here is that you have to find out where exactly am I in the document, right? So which line number and which column. And lastly, we get to return all the autocomplete suggestions. So in our case, that will be the array of all of the functions. Next up, documentation. As I mentioned, we are working on developer-focused products. And if you ask developer to read the entire documentation, they won't do it. At least I wouldn't. So we wanted to bring the documentation closer to them. Right? So for instance, I cannot remember the order of arguments for reduce function. So if you type reduce in this playground, we're actually going to show you, okay, this is the documentation and so on. This is how you use this reduce function. Let's see how we can make that happen. So I decided to use a different example. So this is one autocomplete suggestion, which in this particular case shows you some kind of info about this amazing conference that all of us are here right now. And this is how you do the documentation, right? So the value, notice that it is a markdown string. So that's kind of neat because you can render links in there, you can render emojis and do all kinds of fun stuff. In order to do the fun stuff, though, you have to set the isTrusted flag as true, because otherwise Monaco is like, oh, no. I don't know what that is. I don't know if you download this from like internet or whatever, or W3 schools or something like that. I am not going to render this by default. And this is the result. So if I type city, I'm going to see this documentation entry, and those links are actually clickable. So you can click on that and learn more about all of the amazing speakers and myself. Lastly, the thing is that you end up probably reading more code than you write. So for instance, every Monday, I read my code from Friday because I was trying to comprehend exactly what I was trying to do. So for instance, in Visual Studio Code, you can hover over some of the methods and classes and functions to see, okay, so useRef works like this in this particular version of React. I'm sure they're going to change it in the next version. How can we provide that for our users as well, right? Because if they wrote an expression, they should be also able to hover over the string function, and lo and behold, string function converts something to a string. But it could be a little bit more complicated than that. And this is, again, roughly how you do it. So we are going to register another provider, which in this case is a hover provider. There's a theme there. Next up, we implement the body of this function. And notice that this is just an example. But you can do all kinds of things in there. You can show an alert. You can send a network request. You can do whatever you want inside of this hover handler. So first of all, here, I'm going to find out, again, where am I in the document, in this particular case, over which function I'm currently hovering over. So we are going to go through all of the functions and find out, okay, which one is it exactly. And we're going to render and return the documentation for this particular function. And in our experience, bringing something like that much closer to the user and not telling them, hey, there's a documentation out there, just go ahead and read the entire book. This makes their experience so much better. And lastly, I did mention that with editors like ED and Vim, those more old school ones, there's a very steep learning curve. But once you kind of get over that, you become extremely powerful because you have all those keyboard shortcuts and commands at your disposal. And again, with Monaco, you can build something like that for your users as well. So to give you an example, right, suppose you are writing a JavaScript editor, and somebody goes and pastes this best code ever written, so that is the code for jQuery library. But if you notice at the bottom, it's a little bit, there's some issues with indentation, right? So you could either fix it by hand, which it's not exactly fun, or you can implement it something like this. So you can add a keyboard command. So if somebody is going to hit Control or Command, depending on the machine, and S at the same time, we're going to invoke the editor action format document. And there's tons of built-in functions that you can use in Monaco, and this is just a function, so you can do whatever you want in there. You can save the document to some kind of database. You can show documentation hints. You can, I don't know, change the dark mode to light mode, and so on. There's all sorts of ideas that you can do in there. And this is, the result. So we have managed to successfully format the source code for jQuery. And it's been, what, 20 minutes probably, and I went through like 5% of all of the capabilities that Monaco Editor has. So we are going to stay here for a while. So I hope that you have some snacks for the night. Let's move to takeaways. I have a couple of things that I would like to leave you, after this talk. So first of all, do stand on the shoulders of giants. Do not reinvent the wheel until you can, absolutely help it. We're faced with a problem such as, let's build a code editor. Maybe, it is a solved problem because in our particular case, for instance, we didn't have to think about how do we display line numbers because this is a solved problem. And we get to focus on the problems that are, relevant to our business domain that actually help our customers. And, I cannot recommend standing on others' shoulders enough. And secondly, it's not only about customers and business and so on. I honestly think it's fun to try something new just for the sake of it. This project is not like a to-do list. I don't mind to-do lists. I use to-do lists all the time. But this is something different than we are used to build, on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's, again, it's fun to try something new and, give it a shot. It won't hurt. I would like to leave you with this one final quote. So, in Rust programming community, there's this very popular saying that Rust is awesome, and I agree, because systems programmers can finally, freaking finally, have nice things. Like they don't have to, do manual memory management in C. They can use Rust, which is nice, right? And I have this idea that your users can also have nice things. We've spent 50 years building all of those amazing tools for us. Maybe we can give some of those to them. Otherwise, don't make them use a textarea. Thank you.